What is up, guys? My name is Skagbroggy, and we're going to be covering some tips and tricks that I've learned while playing this game, Jurassic World Evolve 2. But before we get into it, if you have any questions, you can catch me playing this game live on Twitch every Tuesday, and feel free to pop on over and ask questions in chat. Otherwise, you can drop your questions down in the comments, and I'll answer them as soon as I can, or it may be covered in a later video. If you have any tips and tricks while you're down in the comments, go ahead and leave those for other players to enjoy. Let's get into it. Probably the first and biggest thing is the reason why the park exists, right? It's the money. We're always after the money. And with that, we're going to want to leave ourselves a little bit of a buffer. I recommend always having about $1.5 to $2 million sitting in reserves waiting just in case you get hit with a storm or something bad happens and you have to recover from it. The reason we want that reserve is because this game will destroy you in a heartbeat. I once had a tornado hit right here, rip through my entire aviary and take out all these power nodes. It took me forever to repair, and it ended up costing me about $6 million between having the park locked down for so long while all the repairs were going and getting all those dinos back in the pen. And you never know what's going to happen in a storm, and you never know how long it's going to take you to recover from that storm. While we're on the topic of money, every once in a while, if you're low on money or you're trying to save up to get something special or recover from a disaster, avoiding bankruptcy as some of us often do, you might want to jump in a vehicle and go take some pictures. As you can see, pictures can give you a decent amount of money quick, but you don't want to overuse that because you do get diminishing returns on pictures. So after a while, if you take pictures too often, they just don't bring in the type of money they used to. So use it sparingly, but if you're in a pinch, definitely use it to get your money back up. That way you don't stay bankrupt or lose your park. Lastly, on the money related woes, is you're going to want to ditch the backup generators as quickly as possible. You probably already know this if you've played the game at all, because the backup generators deplete fuel at an insane level, and they don't have a huge territory they cover, which means you're going to be building a lot of these backup generators if you want to power a park that's a size like this. It's just not worth the money. So you're going to want to get in the tech tree, and you're going to want to research your power options to get into these small and large power plants as quickly as you can. Now we want to talk about efficiency, keeping your money in the bank and using it where you want to use it, and really just having the most efficient park you possibly can. One way to do this is through your slot improvements on your buildings. Almost every building in the game has these slot improvements that you research over time and you slowly upgrade to get more and more benefits that help you in the long run. As you can see here in the control center, I have my improved administration, which reduces hiring fees and reduces salaries by 10%, which means I'm saving money passively for all of my staff, which just helps keep the money in the bank and helps with those reserves. It's one of my favorite mods, but every single building has it, and you're gonna want to come back and check often because as you go through those tech trees, I know I don't always read all of the details for everything I unlock inside the tech tree because I just want to unlock all the technology. You're going to be unlocking more and more different slots or tech upgrades for these buildings, and you're going to want to look at them to see which one suits your playstyle and your park the best to make it most efficient for you. Scientists are going to be a huge deal in this game. I think we all know they are the center to making the park run and moving all of your technologies forward, as well as figuring out how to get new dinosaurs, making your dinosaurs, and everything that makes the park expand and grow. So, when I look at scientists, they have the three skills: logistics, genetics, and welfare. And you want to kind of spread it out. But the way I do that is by building what I consider my dream team of scientists. If you look down, I have a welfare specialist, a logistics specialist, and a genetics specialist. So I have a specialist that can max out in each of the three categories that's required in order to build everything and do all of your research. Everyone else I get does something to make an activity cheaper for me. I have cheaper research, expeditions, synthesis, and incubation. That's because I want to do everything as cheaply as possible, but I want to make sure I have all the skill points to get everything I need done. And this dream team has served me very well, and it's very rare that I have to use more than 2 scientists to accomplish any objective in the park. Now it's time to talk about the moneymakers, and that's the dinosaurs. That's what we're here for. That's what everyone likes. That's what brings in the guests, how you make the money. And we're going to talk about their happiness, because nothing's worse than having a bunch of upset or mad dinosaurs. So I'm going to look at this pin and we see, well, I have some panicking dinosaurs, but their comfort level is maxed out. And I'm going to look at their needs. And when we're looking at their comfort, you want to keep everything in the white, especially cohabitation. This will help reduce the odds of sickness like the cold and pneumonia if they have 100% comfort. And on top of that, if they do get something like the cold, some of the sicknesses that cure over time will only cure over time based on the dinosaur's comfort level. So you want to keep your dinosaurs above 80% at a minimum, but you want to get it close to 100 as possible. In order to do this, it's better to have a pin with only one species of dinosaur, like this pin over here, where everyone's happy, than it is to have a high populated pin with 3 or 4 different types of dinos where they're only at about a 75% happiness. This will also help prevent prison breakouts. The last thing we need is one of these guys getting loose, chasing down your guests and scaring them out of the park, because frankly, that takes money out of my pocket. As long as their comfort level's high, they're very unlikely to try to leave the pin. Even if a storm comes through and breaks one of these gates, I have a high confidence that my dinos aren't necessarily going to run out of the gate because they have a high happiness and comfort level in their chosen environment that's already mapped out. When we're talking about the dino's happiness, we got to talk about the guest happiness. And I know you guys might not want to talk about this, but we have to talk about your pin size. When we're looking at my pins are relatively small, and that's the way I like them. I usually go with a 4x3 as far as fence length, and that's because that's what a typical viewing gallery can see. By doing this, I ensure that every dinosaur can be seen from a viewing gallery at just about every time. There's a couple exceptions, they might get in a blind spot, but it's pretty rare. And the only pin that I have that's much bigger than that one is this one that's doubled up, and I have a viewing gallery on each side with this viewing platform in the middle. It doesn't really matter what your pin size is or how you want to do it. The biggest takeaway from this is make sure that every part of your pin is viewed or observed by your guest somehow, some way. You don't want blind spots, because that's when you start losing appeal, when dinosaurs start hiding from your guests. When we're building these pins, we're going to want to make sure we're thinking forward. When you build your first pin, you're probably not thinking about where my ride's going to go. But I'm here to tell you that you probably need to think about that, because the ride is going to be crucial, and there's a lot of things that get in the way of the ride. So I like to make pins in these nice blocks that are all rounded off, and I have a gyro station that has a ride that goes through all of these pins because they're all connected. There's no pathways to get in the way. When you're building the pins, there's no problem with having paths and stores and stuff like that in between the pins. Just be aware you're going to have gaps like this one right here and this one over here, in order to get that ride through. And even at that, I probably can't put a ride here because this fence is most likely too close to this path. And that's something to consider when you're building this park out and expanding everything. While we're talking about planning ahead, we're going to go ahead to the next logical step. We're going to want to make sure that we leave room for all of our accommodations, all of our attractions, and all of our hotels. The way I did this is I actually built all of my fencing off the path far enough to allow all of this to go in. And I did this on both sides. This gap that you see right here was actually running all the way through, but once I got all my attractions and hotels in, I started opening up the fencing and the pins a little bit for the dinos to give them a little bit more room. And in doing this, I also created these little nooks. I cut into the pins to ensure that when I place a hotel, it's at least halfway even with the fencing on both sides. That way the circle of visibility around the hotel is maximized. And when that visibility ring is maximized, you get the highest dinosaur appeal, the best accommodation rating, and you get more guests into your hotels. You also want to make sure that your path is offset from the fence so that you can get all of these attractions in here, because you want the attractions right against the fence line. Putting attractions against the fence line is going to help with the appeal overall, and it's going to increase guest foot traction in those areas, because they're going to want to see the dinos while they eat, while they're at the restaurant, while they're shopping. Just anything they might do in your park, they're going to want to see the dinos while they're doing it. And for my last tip, I want to talk about ranger stations. The way I do ranger stations is I always have at least one ranger team that is assigned to absolutely nothing. Ranger Team 4 here will never leave. He always sits at the ranger station. He is my emergency response team. The second I hear a storm coming in, I'm going to come over here to Ranger Team 4. I'm going to highlight him, and I'm going to get ready for the stuff to hit the fan. Once I see a broken fence, I'm going to send Ranger Team 4 there. And that's an important tip too when you're talking about your emergency response team. You have to prioritize the threat. So when I hear a storm coming, I instantly hit all of my emergency shelters. I highlight Ranger Team 4, and as the wrenches start to pop up across my map, I won't send Ranger Team 4 in until I see a broken fence. The reason being is all of the buildings can be fixed once I open the park back up, but I can't open that park back up after the storm until all the fence is secure and all the dinos are back in. Otherwise, you're just going to start losing money. As soon as you get the option, go ahead and build yourself a second ranger team. This is going to help with spacing and distance that the ranger teams have to cover. Now, the way I do the tasking for my ranger teams is I'll assign my ranger teams to no more than 4 outposts. That reduces the amount of time they're out there traveling, and it helps keep everything under status checks so that nothing goes without a status check that long. Plus, by keeping them at only 4 outposts, it makes sure that no matter what ranger team I highlight and select, they're going to be available to do a task for me if they're in the immediate area. So as I'm driving around, I see Ranger Team 4 here. If there was something wrong with this repeater right there, I could send Ranger Team 2. I don't have to go to 4, even though 4 is typically the team I select to repair things. So you don't want to max out your teams, and you want to keep one team that's your lazy emergency responders. All right, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, go ahead, hit that subscribe button. And for more content, check out these links for previous playlists and funny moments from my Twitch stream.